to my Best 11 podcast. Today we are joined by an American international goalkeeper. That's right, another goalie. Marv and I were talking about this the other day. How many goalkeepers we've had on. Started at Indiana Uni and spent a large portion of his time at Luton. A few loan spells around the place. Then obviously QPR, Colombus Crew, New England Revolution, then back to the UK. And over all of his time, if I've got my research correct, picked up 10 caps for the United States of America. Today we are joined by Juergen Sommer. How are you, Juergen?
Oh, great. Thank you guys for having me, and look forward to being part of the show.
Fantastic. Marvin, you're over in the States as well,
Yeah.
but you know Juergen quite well from his Luton days, do you?
Yeah. I mean, Juergen came over and established himself in the Luton team quite quickly. And what I will say is that when you hear Juergen talk now, that was him. Listen, I've never seen the guy. He can maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Angry. That's how he spoke. He said, Marv, you have to pick up more. Marv, you have to be a little bit. That was it. You have to be a little bit tighter. Listen, you can't give him that much space in the box, Marv. You're making me work too much.
So you went from Les Sealey to Juergen Sommer.
Yeah.
Well, you had Alex Chamberlain in there too, so he was a great mentor for me, and a great role model for a young goalkeeper to be around a guy like that. So that was fun.
Fantastic. So we're here to listen to Juergen pick the best 11 players he's ever set foot on a pitch with. So it can be loan spells, it can be international, or it can be his club career. So what we can do is go through all the way through these players. And as we go through, we'll ask a number of questions to Juergen just about his career, find a little bit more about him, really, and a bit of his story. So first question we ask, because we base this on best 11, Juergen, is what formation have you gone for your best 11?
Working with my son Tommy last night, we're trying to squeeze in all the people we want to recognize. We're going to go with a 4-1-3-2. So
4-1-3-2.
I started with a 4-4-2. I was listening to one of your previous podcast guests, and I thought I was going 4-4-2 until we really had to grind through the people, and then we got to 4-1-3-2, and which was kind of interesting because kind of later in my career, towards the end, those kind of more nifty formations started to come into vogue, right? So it kind of fit the bill a little bit.
Excellent. And
you can give honorable mentions.
I have. Well. Don't let me forget. I got a few honorable mentions here.
Okay. And as we go through, Juergen will give us some clues to see if myself and Marv can pick the players and guess the players, and most importantly, you at home or wherever you are can try and see if you can guess the players and beat myself and Marv to that. So let's get going with your goalkeeper, Juergen. Of course, one of the strange positions for you because you would never have played with somebody on the pitch.
It is, Andrew. Before we start with my goalkeeper, though, I'll give you my first clue. I have a little of an Australian legacy in my whole process to go from South Florida to England to Luton Town. And that would be my agent who represented me in the connection that got there. So I'll give you a couple quick tidbits, see if you can guess it really quick.
Okay.
So the agent you're trying to guess was a professional athlete, was not in football. So I'll give you that. It's a kind of a sport England is world renowned for.
Cricket.
So what happened was I was so naive about the whole process. Jimmy Ryan brought me to Luton Town initially while I was still in university, and I had a little bit of time left to finish. By the time I came back, I think I saw the last match where he kept Luton Town up against, I think it was West Ham. Then I think he got the sack after that, and then Pleedy came in and then took me on a preseason trip and then signed me. And then he actually, Pleedy brought me in and said, hey, I need to speak with your agent. Let's sit down and put this deal together. And, I was just shocked. I didn't know how the whole process worked. I didn't have an agent. I didn't even know who to call, but I had some good friends in Florida through a soccer coach who was, believe it or not, he was Egyptian, transferred to Australia and played for the Australian national team. I'll give you his name, Michael Mandalis. And he also had really good friends that were in the sporting industry. They hosted masters tennis tournaments around the world. So, and I would coach their kids in the summer when I was home from university, and we just became great friends. And Roger was the name of the husband. Yvonne was the name of the wife, and that's all I'll give you as a clue. And so I called Yvonne and Roger was actually English, and he said, I'll call a friend of mine who'll come up there to Luton and represent you with Pleady and put your contract together. And that was the first time I met the guys when he walked into Kenilworth Road with me. So
it was a tennis player then?
Tennis player.
He's tennis
It was Yvonne Goulagong.
That's right. That was Yvonne and Roger were acquaintances of mine that I got to know in Naples, Florida. They lived there at the time because I was coaching their kids, and their mutual friend was my goalkeeper coach, my soccer coach there in Naples. So they called a friend of theirs, and he actually worked in around the Fulham area for a big organization there in that sport, and he came up to represent me, and Pleady obviously recognized the guy, and he had a world famous tennis partner who was left-handed. Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
You're joking. Are you what?
McEnroe.
Yeah, he was McEnroe's doubles partner.
Oh, not what's his name? Oh, do you know Andrew?
His wife's English. He was the president of the Lawn Tennis Association. You guys, you call yourselves English.
I know, and I love tennis. I can't think of his name.
I'm not a tennis fan. I don't have any idea about tennis.
Peter Fleming.
That's it. I knew it. I mean,
yeah.
Peter, so you were represented by a tennis player as your agent when you first walked into Luton?
Yeah, because I called Yvonne and Roger because I knew Roger and Yvonne were helping me go on trials throughout Europe when I was in university. So he set me up with numerous clubs in Germany, Schalke, Bayer Erdinge. And so I was doing things like I had a German passport, right? And a German name. I speak German. And Yvonne's husband would set up these masters tournaments all over the world. So I actually played in one in Gelsenkirchen in Germany with Ilie Nastase and all the old names of tennis. So I called him and said, Roger, I need help. I'm in England and they want me to sign a contract and I don't know what to do. I need an agent. So he sent Peter Fleming up to represent me. And I got Pleady Marv, he just got a big kick out of that, right? So that was really fun. And that was the first time I ever met him, but Peter did a great job for me. I think he negotiated my first 2 contracts here with Luton Town. So yeah, that was a lot of
brilliant.
fun.
Absolutely brilliant.
That's an amazing story. Amazing story. So we'll get on to goalkeepers then. Let's go goalkeepers. Remember to give us some clues as you go through. And then you can do some honorable mentions at the end of each kind of position.
All right. This should be pretty easy for you guys. So how can I really start? I would just probably say big, deep voice, big presence, mountain of a man.
What other clubs? Did he play for any other clubs?
Oh, yeah. If I gave you the club, that would just make it too easy, Marv, right?
Okay, then. Okay. Well, give us some not so
little mustache, dark hair, just cool as a cucumber.
Nationality?
He's English.
Alec Chamberlain.
No, Alex was
mustache.
Alex was great. Had a mustache. He even at one point pulled it back into a long ponytail, and I think he got a lot of abuse for that. He played in the southern end of England.
What?
Well, what's that?
I know
Not outside.
Did he play for Arsenal as well?
He played for Arsenal primarily.
Yeah.
When did you play with David Seaman? I did so much research and I didn't stumble across that. When did you play with David Seaman? I'm intrigued by this.
I'm assuming playing against people is the same. Or were you guys just wanting people on the same team as me?
On the same team. Sorry, Jörg. On the same team.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. We'll do a bit of a twist today. This is going to make. I'll cross out all my research. We'll do a bit of a twist.
No, that's pretty
David
good.
Seaman then. So you played again. Was that when you were at Luton, or was that when you were at QPR?
just at QPR. So
Yeah.
I'll do a little bit of both. So guys that I have some that I did play with, but also kind of in a best 11 saying these are guys that I thought for me,
Right.
as a professional footballer looking at them, I'm like, wow, they're special players in their respective positions. So
Fantastic. So Seaman, so you played against Seaman.
Yeah, I
What
thought
what age were you at that stage? What, mid-20s?
I was about 95, so I was probably mid to late 20s, and obviously at QPR at that point and playing them, and he was just so gracious after the game. You know how you would go to the players' bar and see our friends, and he was in there, and so I just introduced myself to him. Obviously for me, being a goalkeeper, I just really enjoyed watching him play. His style, his composure, just always cool under pressure, and he was just such a professional, such a great, colleague, I would say at that point. Didn't obviously had the first couple Premier League games for me, and being there for the first time, and having a chance to play on the same field with somebody like that was pretty cool for me. I really enjoyed that, but he was great, and just enjoyed just over the years watching him play. And obviously we all have good days, bad days, but all in all, just an incredible keeper, and so I enjoyed that. But in terms for me, from a goalkeeping position, obviously I mentioned Alec already, but I don't know, Marv, give you a couple clues of our goalkeeper coach that came into Luton Town from time to time, a couple times a week. The old cat that was legendary. I don't know if you can remember his name as a goalkeeper trainer. He drifted to a number of different clubs, played in a World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
Spent some time in the U.S.
Timmy?
Peter Bonetti. You remember
Peter Bonetti? The cat. Yes, the cat.
That's right.
So I would say from a goalkeeping standpoint, Peter Bonetti was, for me as a young, goalkeeper coming to England for the first time at Luton Town. Granted, he wasn't with us every day, but I mean, he was instrumental in just the education process of being a goalkeeper, angles and positioning, and just kind of teaching you how to be a pro. And obviously the activities we did with him were great. So it was just a great learning experience. And that's one thing I really enjoyed in England, was all the great coaches that I had and that I was able to come across, whether it was at Luton or Queen's Park Rangers. And, I was a first American goalkeeper there in the UK in the first division, and also then in the Premier League. So it was all relatively new for us. We have a lot of great coaches in the US, but not with that type of international experience, worldly experience, and how to be a pro, how to get up every day and carry yourself, and that's where Peter, for me, was really instrumental. So
I forgot about him coming in, Jurgen. He came in a couple of times, didn't he? I forgot about that. Yeah.
Was that when Pleaty was there? Was that? Or was that in Jim Ryan's first?
I think he crossed over both managers. I think he did a number of clubs, not just ours, but he came in a couple of days a week, and was a great guy. I know he passed away recently, so but just again, just great, just great to be in his presence and share his experience and knowledge, and so that was
right. So that's goalkeeper. Let's move on. So we will go through and look at players you played against then. Against and for. So we'll open it up. So we'll go right back or left back, whichever one you prefer.
We'll start with a left back. Sorry, I just got better stories with guys that I played against.
Listen, that's what makes you special. You just do whatever you want. Go on.
So left back. Who did you play against? Left back then.
I'm joking.
Some clues.
All right, some clues. He was probably one of the first players that would roll up his shorts really high so it would expose his quads and his legs, and you wouldn't say anything to the guy because you'd be afraid he'd come cut you in half.
Did he play for West Ham?
He might have, but I would just stick to his primary club. Primary club colors were red and white. I'll give you that.
He got the right player, Marv, I think.
Was not in Manchester, was not in London.
But he managed a club in Manchester, if it's the player I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But you guys, Remember, I
on a paper play deal. I think he was managing up at Man City, wasn't he?
Notts Forest.
yes.
Yeah.
And started his career off as a part-time player in North London.
See?
Yes, at Woolston. Yes, and you were talking earlier off air about players working their way up and having different types of players. And he's the type of player, I think, that really appreciated and I don't know, maybe appreciated is the wrong word, but really he worked his socks off to get there. We're talking, of course, Juergen about
Stuart Pearce.
Pearce, we got it. We're on a roll, Andrew.
You're on a roll.
This could be good.
I'll give you my Stuart Pearce story, Marvin. You'll appreciate this, right? So I think we're playing for Luton Town at the time, and Alec has gone on to Sunderland, Chamberlain, right? So now it's, I get the nod. So I'm nervous as all can be, right? My first season as a, starting goalkeeper. So one of the games is Nottingham Forest. And as a goalkeeper, there's certain grounds you love to go to and play that I just play well. And I love going to Nottingham Forest because you remember, Marv, there was a big club at that time, lots of fans, obviously a great team. And so I always enjoyed playing there and would play well. But I was still nervous my first season anyway. There's free kick outside the box, left-hand side, edge of the 18-yard box. And I'm thinking, all right, I got this. I'm trying to organize my two-man wall because, it's not really a direct shot on goal. There's lots of people in the box. And all of a sudden, Stuart Pearce starts coming up to take the free kick. And I'm just like, holy shit, not Stuart Pearce, please. So I'm looking around trying to scramble, put a two-man wall together. And I think the only people I could get was like Scotty Oakes and I got who else was there? Richard Harvey. So like a Richard Harvey, Scotty Oakes, I'm like, oh my God, this is like the most feeble wall I could put out there. But I'm like, all right, he's not going to shoot at the wall. He's going to slice it in, and kind of flash it in front of the box, and I'll have to kind of come out to collect it. I mean, he unleashed the hardest free kick, and literally Scotty Oakes and my wall just split into two. They dove for cover, and it went right between the wall, skipped on the ground. It was a little bit wet out there, so the ball picks up more velocity. So I'm having to come back across myself to make sure it doesn't go into the goal. And it skips down, hits my chest, hits my jaw, and I thought, please, God, let my two front teeth still be in my mouth. It just rattled every tooth in my mouth. And then it spilled out and somebody smashed it in for a goal. So, but I just thought to myself, that thing had so much force and velocity on a strike. I was like, it almost just blew a hole in my chest. But just a mountain of a man, right, as a player. And later on, I got to kind of bump into him as I was doing some scouting for the U.S. I was in the UK, and he was, I think, with the England under 21s as a coach, if I'm not mistaken at the time. And just great person to chat to, real professional about football. Obviously, it's he's taken it to the high levels of management and being involved in the game. But yeah, I didn't realize he worked his way up that way. So I was so new to football, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yes, he did indeed. So we'll move to right back, unless you want any honourable mentions for left back.
No, I did have an honourable mention for goalkeeper, but we can come back to those at the end. We'll do
that's a good idea. Yeah, we'll keep going. So right back.
All right. So this player played in a number of clubs in England, also in Scotland. You guys have talked about him before in your show, so it shouldn't be that hard, especially for Marv. But just a beast of an athlete, as we all know, can run for fun, up and down, and just, good as gold is in terms of personality and camaraderie and friendship. So I consider him a close personal friend. And
Andrew?
I assume it's a player we've had on here, isn't it?
It's a player you've discussed on your show before and pretty recently.
I don't think he's been on here.
The player hasn't been on there, but one of your other guests mentioned him.
Oh, I was going Graham Alexander, but maybe Alexander came after Juergen left the club, did he?
So he was one of the young guns at Luton Town.
Scottish, Andrew.
Yeah, Graham Alexander's Scottish.
Yeah, I know. But he wasn't born in Scotland.
Marvin knows.
Yeah, he wasn't born in Scotland.
Go on, Marvin. Who is it?
Paul Telfer.
Yeah, Paul
What,
Tell.
a right back?
Yes,
I know he
right
played
back.
he played right midfield, but as he got older, he played, a
Yeah,
little
played
bit of
right
center back and right back. So
That's what I was never going to guess Telfer,
Right.
because I never had it. I didn't have him down as a right back, because I always imagine in that team, Julian James at right back, or
right.
even I'm trying to think of other right backs, but I never saw Telfer as a right back. But yeah,
I think he played right back a few occasions for Coventry, Celtic, under Strachan.
yeah.
Gordon Strachan loved him in that role. I mean, he's so versatile; you could put him anywhere. But right, Marv, if you're going to have somebody as a wingman next to you, I mean, Paul was a tireless worker and would put himself out there. So, yeah.
Get your clue now, Juergen, about the cross country running. So yes.
Oh my God, you guys have already covered it. That guy could run for fun with his golf clubs on his back.
He wasn't normal.
He was. Yeah, it's just abnormal. He was.
What was the expectation of you as a goalkeeper when they do these runs and things like that? What's the expectation of you as a goalie? And do you think that's changed nowadays?
Yeah, I do. I think the whole progression of the sports science, that you see with sports performance, I think it's become so position specific, at least here in the U.S. with all the major sports, that for goalkeeping is, it's a little bit different of a performance gauge, I would say, or measuring stick. So you're really looking for more dynamic movements and explosive movements than the capacity and the lung capacity to run long distances, be a half sprinter, half marathon runner like Telfer was. So yeah, I think that's changed with sport, the science of sport but man, I know in the Luton Town days, I can't remember where we went, somewhere in Dunstable, Marv, to run those mountains or those hills with Rudy. You remember that?
Dunstable Downs. It's called Dunstable Downs.
With the big lion, with the big white lion, the chalk lion. Yes.
Yeah. So, the goalkeeping guidance was, do the best you can and stay with the pack, and which wasn't hard to do with Alec Chamberlain and Andy Peterson, right? Andy wasn't the most fleet of foot guy out there, so I was in good company. I could keep up, but I was not challenging the Ken Gillards and the Paul Telfers of the world. So,
yes, I'm going to drop in there. The reason why you mentioned Andy Peterson, this is a personal thing. I'm just going to chuck in here. I got my first ever pair of goalkeeper gloves from you.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, because I used to live across the road from Andy Peterson. And I know you and Andy Peterson used to spend a lot of time together, particularly in that kind of 92, 93, 94 time. I spent a lot of time with him. I don't remember if you won't remember back then, but I used to live across the road as an 8-year-old, and you gave me, like I was playing out the street, and you gave me my first ever set of goalkeeper gloves.
Oh, wow!
See?
See?
And thank you, but there was no way Andy Peterson was ever going to give me any of his. Yeah, so I'm
right, Marv. We know Andy. It's hard to find him when the whip came round.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But when the drinks were coming out, it was like, he was there with his hand there first. He didn't grab his first drink.
Yeah,
that for sure.
Yes, but that's just what. Sorry, I just wanted to now, because you were talking about Andy Peterson, I just wanted to chuck in there. Yes, so thank you very much. But I digress. But thank you. So centre backs.
All right, so I'll kind of put the disclaimer. These are non-teammates of mine, but just folks I played against that I thought, because being an American, kind of being in England, right? I was the first goalkeeper there. I was trying to make sure, do my homework. So I watched a lot of football matches. I lived in, remember Kerry Hughes and Mark Pembridge lived in Diggs in Toddington.
That's right.
So I ended up moving my way in there when Pembridge moved out, and Reg and Margaret Baston were the names, and they were fantastic. I mean, literally, I'd leave a pair of dirty socks, and Margaret would have them washed and ironed and on my bed like within the hour. I was like, Margaret, please stop. But Reg and I would watch lots of games, and he loved football, so we would, especially the goalkeeping. I was trying to watch strikers and just to get more familiar with players. So when I got the chance to play, was prepared. But so I spent a lot of time, obviously, watching central defenders too. So my first one, it's kind of I'll make it a little easier for you. It was in the Premiership. Big, tall, lanky center back. Great on set pieces in the box. Played for a London club, so I'll make it a little easier for you. I believe he did get England caps as well.
A lot, or
Trying to think. See, I don't know all the personal stuff of these guys, so I can't give you as many clues. He was
but was he somebody who you know played for England, or is it he might have?
He should have. He's one of those personalities. I'm just not sure if he was like Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland, Island of Wight kind of guy. But okay. I think he did.
That's thrown me a bit.
He was a teammate of the goalkeeper I chose, so that should help you a little bit.
So
Tony Adams, yes.
Yes, I wasn't sure if you're going David O'Leary, but I wasn't sure how far back you were going. By the way, you talking about Ireland as well. Tony Adams.
What a central defender he was. And one of the reasons I put him on the list is, you see guys that have a certain fire in their eyes and a passion, for the game. And then, you come across some set pieces. And I'll give you my Ian Wright story and Tony Adams story on set pieces. So one of my first Premiership games was Arsenal at Arsenal. And so for me, it's a lifelong dream, right? I can't believe I'm even on the same field as all these players and in that stadium, in that environment. So the first corner kick against us, I'm, getting everything organized, like Marv said, go here, trying to make sure I got all my angles covered. And Ian Wright comes up to me and just starts chatting to me, laughing at me, chatting, hey, big man, how you doing? You nervous out here? Ooh, just kind of. And then I see Tony Adams trotting out, but I'm like, oh shit, like that's the last thing you want to see is this guy come into the box because, he'll climb over anything to get his head on the ball. And so right as the corner kick comes in, Ian Wright reaches over and grabs me and just kind of holding on to my parts and just kind of laughing at me, with that gold tooth that he had in his mouth. And he's kind of like, and he just said to me, you're not going anywhere, big man, stay there. And he was absolutely right. I wasn't going anywhere. And then I see Tony Adams like flailing for the ball. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm going to be on Match of the Day, and where's the goalkeeper struggling there with Ian Wright, and Tony Adams is burying this, set piece in the back of the net. But luckily we got away with it. But so that was my first encounter with kind of the Arsenal crew, Tony Adams, but Ian Wright I was not prepared for that at all. So
the dark arts of the Premier League.
Yeah. But what a player he was too. So
definitely.
My other center back is not an Englishman. Give you a clue. He's an Irishman. Not a Liverpool club, not a Manchester club. Was not a London club. But a big club nonetheless at that time, kind of mid. Yeah.
Go on, Andrew.
Mcgraw.
Mid-90s. Yeah. Paul Mcgraw, what a player he was, and again, a guy that, at least when I took notice of him, he was in the latter end of his career and played for a long time, right, Marv? I think he had some pretty substantial arthritic knee issues and.
Correct.
I remember seeing an interview with him, and I think all he really did at training was just ride the bike, and jog a little bit, and then they would roll him out there for the matches. But what a competitor, and feel for the game, and so I got the.
Was he big? I can't ever remember him being the stature of an Adams or somebody like that.
No, but he was strong. He was like solid, as I would call someone solid. Like he was like. Very thick, but quick as well with it. Quick,
and just a velvety touch, but just a fierce competitor. Great positioning, angles. He was hard to beat. If you could get around that guy in any capacity, it was quite an effort. But so He was
Yeah.
one of the ones there for me. I'll give you an honorable mention. We'll save those for the end. We'll save those for the end.
Okay. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just before we go to
Yeah.
the break, just want to jump in there. Like, again, I'm in the States. Mainly with regards to soccer, as they call it, it's the women or girls who are predominantly playing this game and
Right.
more well known for. How is it that you, stroke German, born in US, got into soccer, as they call it here, at such a way back when it wasn't as fashionable?
Really, my parents. So my parents are real quick flashback. Both my parents are originally from Germany. Then they emigrated to New York to leave Germany and look for a new opportunity, which a lot of Germans did at that point. So they were young kids growing up post warrior in Germany, and there just wasn't opportunity there, and so they left. And so my dad had a friend from his hometown that started a business in New York and sponsored him and brought him over. And then he went back, married my mom, and brought her over. So I was actually born in New York City in Manhattan. And my dad also was a goalkeeper. At that time, he was in the youth academy for HSV in Hamburg in northern Germany. And when he came to the U.S., he was actually in the NASL with the New York Cosmos. He was on the farm team, so he was one of the backup goalkeepers. I have a picture on the wall that I can show you over there from a game that he played in with the Cosmos and got man of the match. But he did that for a little while before reality set in that you got to pay the bills and raise a family. At 2 boys at that time, so then we moved out to New Jersey. So that's in New Jersey, New York, Marv, as you know, is big soccer hotbed, right?
Yeah.
A lot of big, and at that time it was all ethnic crowds, right? So I played for a German American club. I played for the Italian Americans in Raritan, New Jersey. So that's where kind of football took off for me. And then we moved down to Florida, South Florida. As I was a little bit older, my dad was just a bad health and needed a warmer climate. But anyway, give you an example is every Sunday there was a football show, Soccer Made in Germany. I don't know if you guys ever saw that in Australia or you saw that in England, but it was one of the main football shows that got pushed out of Europe that we were able to get in the US. So my dad literally had to buy like a NASA satellite dish that we put in the backyard. I mean, it was as big as a ping pong table, right, in the backyard. It rotated around, at certain times of the day to get the shows. And he purposely bought that. And I know it pissed off our neighbors, because it was right next to our neighbor's house who was not happy, was in the ground. So this thing was massive. But he primarily got it so he could watch Soccer Made in Germany, which was a Sunday show, kind of like Match of the Day, right? Highlights all the goals, the teams. And so that's how I grew up, watching football made in Germany with my dad and playing youth sports. But I played other sports.
Right.
I wasn't a goalkeeper till I was 17 years old, so I didn't even think of being a goalkeeper.
17? Did you say?
17, yeah. So I was doing other things, playing basketball, which obviously is a great crossover sport for goalkeeping. I was playing football or soccer, but I wanted to be a striker, right? So then I started growing in my body, size 14 feet, and I went from 5'10" to 6'2", and then I grew another 3 inches at university and ended up being 6'5". And so my striker days were over because I just couldn't run. And I had a really good, just a teacher that was a teacher at the school and a mentor. And he was also a football coach and assistant coach with our high school team. And he played at a lower level in university, like a Division III level. So, still competitive, but not, at a Division I, like you would see Marv with some of the bigger schools, Indiana, Virginia, Duke, UCLA, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And he's like, Juergen, you can play at the next level, because he loved to shoot. And so I'd say after training, and I would be the goalkeeper just messing around. And he's like, you're really, really good. And he's like, I think you could play at the next level. So for the next year, he just worked with me, basically just, took a couple thousand shots at me over the course of a year. And then I walked on to the Indiana University team. So I wasn't recruited by that school. It was on my flight path on the way back to Florida, because I went to a boarding school for high school, because the schools in Florida at that time weren't very good. And we had gone up to this, it's called the Culver Academies, and they have a summer camp program. It's kind of what they call woodcraft camp. So you live in cabins and you do all kinds of artsy craftsy, outdoorsy stuff, sports. And so they recruited me there to play soccer. So anyway, I walked onto the Indiana team and went from the 5th goalkeeper to the starting goalkeeper after a couple games in my first season, and then played every game for the next 4 years. And so I was able to win a national championship, my sophomore year. I got Adidas Player of the Year that year as well. Then I started to get into the youth national teams, and then I was the alternate goalkeeper for the 1990 World Cup team. So
in the same year?
Within a span of about 3 years, I did all that.
Wow.
So you was a walk-on.
I just walked on and said, hey, Indiana won their first 2 national championships in Florida because they used the old Fort Lauderdale Strikers Stadium, with Garrett Mueller and all those guys in the NASL. That's where the universities played their national championships because the weather was still warm in November, December, and it was, perfectly sized, stadium for that level of play. And we lived an hour away. So we went to those 2 games and watched them win. So I knew Indiana had a good team. And I just said, if I'm going to try and play at this level, I want to try to play for one of the best teams. So I just asked the coach if I could walk on, and I did. And, a couple guys got hurt at the right time, and I got bumped up the bench, from the 3rd guy to the 2nd guy. And by the 3rd game, the starting goalkeeper was just struggling a little bit. He had a knee injury, so he threw me in. And I think I just played out of pure fear and panic, but I did a good enough job to play the next game, the next game, the next game. And it just amounted to, 4 years of consecutive play.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's how that kind of started. But it wasn't something I planned on. It just kind of organically happened,
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause it there. And then when we come back from our break, a message from our sponsors, we will have Marv's 60 seconds and we'll hear the rest of Juergen's best 11 players. Great. We are back for part 2 of Juergen Sommer's My Best 11. We'll hand, as ever, straight over to Marv for Marv's 60 seconds. Straight over to you, Marv.
Okay, Juergen, let's go. Best player you've ever seen live. So that means not on TV, you've actually gone to a game and watched. What's the best player you've ever seen?
Probably Roberto Maldini. When I was with the national team, I was just on the bench, so I got a close-up view. We were playing U.S. versus the Italian national team in Chicago, and just to see this guy operate, was pretty cool.
Perfect. All right, VAR or no VAR?
I would say yes, VAR.
Okay. Favorite other sport?
I would have to say tennis.
Okay. Best football ground you ever played at? For you. Best football ground.
Most dynamic ground I've ever played at. It's probably Azteca Stadium in Mexico City.
Okay. Penalty shootout or golden goal? Which one?
That's a tough one. I really like the golden goal.
Choose one. Come on, time. Got 6 seconds.
Golden goal.
Okay. All right. If you wasn't a footballer, what would you have done?
Oh, good
career-wise?
question. Marv, I think that's why I was a footballer, because I couldn't think of anything else to do.
All right. Messi or Ronaldo?
I'd go Ronaldo.
All right. And if you could change one rule in a game, what would it be?
Ooh. Probably a little bit of an adjustment with the offsides rule. I think they can do a little bit there to get a little bit more dynamic.
Okay. Bundesliga, or in Bundesliga, La Liga, or Serie A for quality? Which league?
Say, what was the first one? Sorry.
Bundesliga, La Liga, or Serie A?
Probably La Liga.
So, just to unpack one of those answers you gave, you said golden goal. As a goalkeeper, surely penalty shootout is only a win for you because you can't. Do you know what I mean? You can only be a hero. So I was surprised you went for golden goal.
I'm kind of more of a purist of the game. I'd like to see the game won, on a proper goal. I just hate to see it come, to penalty shootouts. But you understand, right, with the time constraints and putting the players through that rigor, and it can be dangerous to the players too, right? They're extremely tired, and you're pushing them well beyond their physical limits at times if that golden goal scenario just continues on and on and on. So I understand the need for penalty shootout, and I agree with you. One of the reasons I was able to play professional football was because of a penalty shootout. When I was at university, I was playing with the U.S. team in Holland, and we were in a tournament called the Harlem Cup. So this is Ruud Gullit's tournament in his hometown, and it went to with the U.S. team that I was on. It went to a penalty shootout in the semifinal, and I saved 4 of the 5 penalty kicks, which actually got the attention of Luton Town and the chaperone that we were with, and got me, Marv, to England later that summer. And then I turned around and came back to Holland with a Luton Town team to play in another tournament in Holland for preseason. So it actually helped me kind of get on that professional path. But just in the pure essence of the game, I'd rather see it, I'd rather see a beautiful goal determine the outcome of a game than a penalty shootout.
Incredible how it turns on I'll say 1 shot, but 4 shots. But that's incredible how that's what got you your pathway to Luton. We will move on to midfielders. Wherever you will start off with the holding, I suppose, is that what it's called? Is that what you put them down as?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll start with our holding midfielder. So you're going to have to put I'll give you as many good clues as I can. It's an international player. I don't think this player has ever played in England, mostly North America, South America. He's an international player, so he's represented his national team. He's an icon on his national team, and got to get up close and personal with him in competition here in the U.S. during the '94 World Cup, in which afterwards he ended up playing here in the U.S. for a while. And so I got to play with him on an all-star team. So I actually did play with him on an all-star team, played against him in MLS, but was probably considered one of the best in the business at what he did. And he had an unbelievable physical appearance that set him apart from most players in the world. I mean, he was very recognizable.
Have you got the same person? Maybe Mark.
Maybe I would. I'll be honest. If go on, say it. If it's not the same person,
Carlos Valderrama.
You nailed it.
I didn't have him
because he had the big blonde,
big hair.
Yes, Carlos Valderrama played for Colombia, didn't he? Yeah.
That's right. For a long time, and he wasn't the most athletic guy in the world, right? He wasn't going to outrun you, but
skillful though.
Skillful. Could not get the ball off this guy. I mean, he could take on 6 guys in a phone box, and still kind of have the ball at his feet. And before you could put any pressure on him, he already got rid of the ball and was already on to the next move. But
street football, do you think there's something to be said for street football? Because that's obviously where he learned a lot of it.
Absolutely do. I think the pendulum swinging the other way a little bit in football. I'm involved in youth sports here, youth football. We've got 600 kids in our club, and sometimes it can get too prescribed where parents and even players are expecting the coaches to really develop the kids. And Marv, you guys know, we all probably have coached soccer or football. We just don't have enough time at training with these kids, right? We get them 2-3 days a week for an hour and a half. If we're lucky, that's not enough to really develop a high level player. Kids have to be willing to do things at home on their own with their friends in their own environment. They've got to be creative. And imaginative when they play. So playing small-sided games against each other, against older kids especially, it's got to be part of it. And you just don't see that here, at least where I don't see that as much as I would like to, because I think that's what really can really develop a player,
Yeah.
Beyond team training.
I totally agree with you, Jurgs. You don't get to see that now. And I don't know if it's. Times have changed. Andrew. I know I'm a lot older than you, but I don't. As a kid, I played out all the time, playing football with my friends every single evening. I just don't know if that happens now. If there's kids literally now in Luton when playing in the streets. There's so much.
I don't know if there is in Luton. I know my son's broken 2 windows in the past 3 weeks out the front of my house doing it. So
that's profession.
So they do it.
Not that he's broken 2 windows, but refreshing to hear that he's playing in the garden. Sorry, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because there's so many distractions, with computers and handheld games and stuff and phones. Right. I just don't know if it actually happens as much as when I was a kid.
But you both think it makes you a better player, and that's what, obviously, getting back to Carlos Valderrama, the reason I asked the question was, obviously, he had to learn, probably as a younger player, to play on the streets before he got proper coaching.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. So what made Valderrama that defensive shield? Do you like a defensive shield? Did you, obviously, as a goalkeeper, number one thing's about clean sheets for you, or you seem a bit more of a purist as well, though?
No, obviously with a Paul McGrath and Tony Adams in front of me and a Stuart Pearce and a Telfer, I'll be quite fine with that. I think I got most of my worries covered with that group. So, no, I just think what Carlos was great at is, he's not probably world renowned for his defensive skills right in front of the goal. He played ahead of his time in the fact that I think he played defense higher up the field, and the other team's half were getting the ball and keeping the ball, and building an attack further up the field just makes him such a dynamic player, right? And I think that's come into fashion here later, after my career, more that, teams were pressing more higher up the field. Let's defend higher up the field, put teams under pressure instead of everybody dropping back at the halfway line, and then we'll defend in our half. So Carlos was always very forward thinking in the fact that he would do his job further up the field, and he was capable of doing that, right? With his skill set. So you very rarely see him tracking a runner into the box at the far post, but his skill set was his ability to press and win the ball and keep the ball in the midfield. And he tended to do it from the center of the field forward. So that's what I liked about him in that role.
Yeah, fantastic. So we move on to the midfield, I suppose, and wherever you want to go from there.
We'll start with one of the hardest positions to find, right? We'll go a left-sided player, so a left midfielder. Again, this goes back to England, kind of Premiership kind of time. Non-US or a non-English player, so it's a foreign player with one of the big London clubs. I'll give you that.
What era? What seasons?
Probably, for me, so it was kind of mid-90s, that 94 to 96, 97.
Was he French?
Yes, he was a national team player.
Did he play for a black and white team as well?
Yes.
You got it, Andrew?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I don't know why. Originally, I was going to Anders Limpar or something like that, but now nothing like that. We've gone for the locks. The first person who made having long hair in football really fashionable and keeping it beautiful. I think. Have I got the right person?
I think so.
I think so.
David Ginola.
Yeah. So as I look across the midfield, I'm thinking of guys. Just to help you with the other two. that when you see them coming at you with the ball, you know they can do things from distance. They're dangerous. And as a goalkeeper, you're sitting back there and thinking, all right, who can pull the trigger from 20, 30 yards out? And all three of these guys can do that. And, you would not want to see one of these guys either barreling down the wing or, cutting up the midfield coming at you as a goalkeeper. That's for sure.
Yeah. Do you know that was special? Do you know there was definitely one of the first flair players to come from abroad, I suppose, in a way.
Wouldn't you think, Marv, he was kind of one of the first kind of incoming international players like that before there really was the number that we have today?
Yeah, I think so. And it was a case where, it was Newcastle he started. Was it Newcastle?
Yeah, he went from Auxerre, I think, and then to Newcastle,
and then to Tottenham.
Newcastle,
yeah. I think because, and again, at the time, I suppose Keegan. Was it Keegan who probably brought him? Newcastle were one of the big guns, weren't they, when they were going for the title?
Oh, they were all about foreign flair because they were bringing Asprilla, those type of players, weren't they?
Asprilla. You remember Tony Thorpe's goal at Newcastle in the FA Cup run? To level the score and take us to.
I'm still. Oh, these lights keep going on. Because I'm still good friends with Thorpe. That's all he talks about. I said, that's Thorpe. That's gone. You can't. And listen, you scored more than one goal. Trust me, you can't keep talking about that goal all the time. But no, it was a fantastic goal. It's a great goal.
That was a great goal at the perfect time, right, Marv, to get out of there. I never seen Pleedy so excited in my life. I can only imagine the amount of water Pleedy put on the Kenilworth Road pitch before the return game. He loved just kind of mopping up the field, making it super wet and sloppy so we could run at him.
While we're on that topic, the FA Cup run, what was that like for, particularly obviously an American, coming across and seeing the magic of the FA Cup? What was that like, that run?
That was probably one of the best sporting life experiences that I had. I was obviously a very young pro, and once Alec kind of had left and gone to Sunderland, and I got to kind of take over the reins there in goal, and then to put together a run like that with the team we had, right? Obviously, Luton, we were in the first division. We had very good players, right, Mark? But we tended to be a lot of younger guys in there when you look across the board, just the nature of being maybe a smaller club that had to sell players. But we had fantastic players, and you go across all the names that were there even prior to when I got there for the 88, the Littlewoods Cup, right? All the players that were there then, a few of those guys were still hanging around, the Steen brothers and Mick Hartford and so forth. And then to have an opportunity to run with, and I watched that in the US, so that was what was really cool for me, is when I was thinking about coming to Luton and they were doing all that, that was in the back of my mind because I was watching it from the US, and then to have the opportunity to do it kind of with our group of players. You had the Mark Pembridges of the world and the Kerry Hughes, the Welsh guys, we had the Irish guys, the Scottish guys, the English guys, and we had a really young, dynamic team, and a lot of players went on to play, a lot of great clubs after that. But to play the teams we did, the Newcastles, the Chelseas, the West Hams, home and away, and just finding ways to win and stay in the cup, that was a lot of fun. And then, playing the semifinal in Wembley was really cool too, especially for me, right? It's kind of the holy grail of football, and one of the biggest, greatest venues in the world. And my mom was able to come over from Florida to watch the game, and so it was super cool. It's just, again, I pinched myself. I got to play at Wembley a couple times, that in the cup game, and then with the U.S. team versus England, I got to play on in that game. So I did actually play against a lot of those guys that are in my list here, but that was so cool, right? To have that chance. I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't get much better than this, and so that was fun.
Right.
But that was just so much fun to see a club like Luton Town and our young team really kind of take on some of the bigger names in English football at that time.
Yeah.
So just going back to what you just mentioned about playing at Wembley and stuff, and again, I was going to come on to that, but you brought up about the national team, and you did play against England at Wembley. What was that like? I mean, and how did it come about? Was that your first cap for the full national team?
No, guys, I've had I don't know the record keeping at US, but I was involved with the national team for a long time. I started in 1988, so I was at university still after we won the national championship, which was my sophomore year. So I was probably 20-ish, just maybe 20 at that point. But again, I was an alternate. I was a backup goalkeeper. Obviously, if you're not the goalkeeper, you're not getting a lot of caps because only one guy's playing. And so I was around the U.S. national team and our World Cup teams from 1988 to 2004. So I was on the scene.
But what was the first ever game when you got your first cap? You played for the U.S. Who was that against, and how was that?
It was probably one of these smaller CONCACAF countries. Here in the U.S. during one of the Gold Cups or one of the summer events that I was back for. And I don't know how closely they recorded my caps compared to some of the other. I think I had a few more than that, but nobody honestly with the US was kind of run like a mom and pop shop, when I honestly, it really was, Marv, it really was back in the day. There was only a small handful of people, Alan Rothenberg, Sunil Gulati, I can name them off, 3 or 4 people that really ran it, and they weren't, the sport wasn't as established as it was in the UK with the FA and the national teams. All those things were kind of new to them. So I would pick up games during the summers, or we'd go to the Copa America in South America somewhere, the Gold Cup in the US, World Cup qualifiers. But I was also the first goalkeeper, one of the first US players to play overseas and really be established and be like there for a long period of time. I was constantly getting called back. You guys probably didn't realize it as much, but Pleedy was a really big help for me in dealing with our World Cup coach, Bora Milutinovic, for the 94 World Cup, the Yugoslavian coach, because it came down to me and Casey Keller, who's going to get that last, goalkeeping spot. It was Tony Meola, Brad Friedel, and then myself. I got the U.S. poster right there, right, from that 94 team. But Pleedy was a big deal for me to make that team, but I couldn't leave, right? Why would I leave Luton Town where we do things like this FA Cup run, the games I'm playing, the environments that I'm playing, to come back and play, St. John's in the Virgin Islands or, El Salvador, it just didn't make any sense. So I told the coaches, listen, when I'm home in the summer, I'll come play and be available. But I'm not leaving a Luton Town or a Queen's Park Rangers to come back and, come into a mini camp and, play Canada. I'm like, I'm staying here and playing here because I don't want to lose my job and I want to keep progressing here. So I just didn't come back as much. I just went for the major events. I was involved in 3 World Cup teams, multiple Copa Americas, and, so it was a lot of fun, but I didn't play as much because I just wasn't willing to leave and come back. Should I have been called upon to be a goalkeeper in one of these big international games, I would have been better prepared, continuing my career in England and flying back and forth. And that's a challenge for a lot of the US guys. They have to fly so far to get back for games. Listen, the clubs, they don't like that a whole bunch, right? It's different if you're going from England to Germany or England to Italy and you're back in a couple hours. But if you're flying to Mexico City, and it's a 14, 15-hour flight, and then you got to play, turn around, come back in 2 days, turn around and play back in the Premiership. That doesn't go over too well,
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the international teams, South Americans, they quite often now play each other, but in Europe. So they play at the Emirates, they play at Nou Camp, they play somewhere like that, because to save the players having to go back and forth. And of course, we saw the debacle that happened a month ago now from the Brazil-Argentina game that was called off from the absolute facade that happened there with COVID and players not allowed to come in, and that's another conversation. We did digress a bit.
Like Mark Bosnich, right, the goalkeeper for Aston Villa. I'm sure he had the same. that's difficult to fly all the way back to Australia for games and then come all the way back.
That's a whole day. You spend it one whole. It's 24-hour flight. Yeah, it's a whole day on a plane.
Then you have the 2 or 3 days to recover after the time changes and the flight, and he's putting his career at Aston Villa at risk, you know. And
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Right. So you got Ginola. Who's going in the middle and who's going on the right?
All right, this is probably one of the biggest names. Should be easy for you guys to get. Kind of commanding central midfield figure. Played for one of the biggest, most recognized clubs in the world, an English club. International player. Scored a late goal against me at Queen's Park Rangers when they were pushing to get into one of the European Cup competitions. I think the referee must have let almost 20 minutes of injury time go before they could score and tie the game. So I still have nightmares of that goal going past me to this day, but just a tremendous competitor, probably maybe known for an incident where he kind of came off the field, into the stands, had some fans that were abusing him. So again, one of the players that, seeing him on the other side of the pitch and watching him operate, you just get a real appreciation for really how good these guys are.
Another Frenchman?
How attacking is this team going to be? He's playing in midfield.
I know. Eric Cantona.
Yeah. So he was, what a player he was. And again, just overall soccer IQ, and just understanding of the game and awareness of everybody around him on his team and the ability to play a variety of different balls. And so late in the game, we were beating him 1-0 at QPR. And again, we went into injury time, more and more injury time. It was almost as if, the ref wanted these guys to get a goal so they wouldn't, get some points from us. And so Alan McDonald was our center back, and David Bardsley was in there as a right back, and something came down the wing, cross comes in the box, and who's steaming in at the last minute for a header to the far post was Eric Cantona. And I'm scrambling, trying to get across the goal to get something on it, but just too little too late. He's too big, too powerful, just kind of put the game winner away. But again, just somebody in that role in the midfield that for me, being in England and having a chance to be on the field with somebody like that, again, was a great learning opportunity, super special, just to see a player at that level play and operate, and kind of, he controlled the tempo of the game for the most part.
No, definitely. Fantastic pick. So next to Ginola, Cantona, do we have a trio of Frenchmen?
No, we don't. It kind of sounds like a Frenchman, but it's an Englishman. And it's not at a major club. He's one of the loyalists that probably got over 400 caps with that particular club. Was probably one of the most creative English football players ever. Maybe he didn't look the part, but definitely was the part.
Did he play down the South Coast?
He did.
He was born, I think he was born in the right place. He was actually born only about 30 miles from France. He was born on the Shetland Islands. He was born on the Shetland Islands, wasn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
Matthew Letitia.
Yes, what a player he was. What a player he was. He was Glenn Hoddle before Glenn Hoddle. You know what I mean? This guy could play. And again, I was telling Tommy, my son, and he obviously has no idea who this guy is. And then he looked him up and had quite an impressive, Wikipedia page and resume. And I said, Tommy, this guy with a ball at his feet from 40 yards away, you would not take your eye off this guy as a goalkeeper.
Get him to jump on YouTube and look at all those free kicks where he flicked them up to himself on the free kicks, and he started playing volleys. It was amazing. Keepy uppies and then put in the top corner.
Yeah,
incredible.
Dead ball situations around the box, penalty kicks. I don't ever remember him missing one. And I just remember, this guy's going to embarrass me if there's a penalty kick or a free kick around the box. And so it just scared the living shit out of me, just seeing him on the other side of the field going, please, just keep him as far away from me as possible. But what a player. So again, just to see the artist. This guy was a true artist, right, when he played. So he did some things maybe most managers, didn't like, because it wasn't as structured and disciplined as they would want it. But man, so creative, so silky smooth with the ball. I really enjoyed kind of watching him play and enjoying his goals, and probably one of the best in the business at what he did, in my opinion. So.
Oh yeah, listen. I think when we look back now, I mean, on some players' careers who's graced the Premiership, Matthew Letizia has to be up there. And for me, for the goals he scored, they were like unbelievable goals. I mean, I played against him when he was a youth team player, because we used to play in the Southeast Counties against Southampton, and I first came across him when we lost 13-1 to Southampton, and he scored 7. So
wow.
He was already like on the radar, and what he went on to do in the Premiership was no surprise to me or anyone who knew him at Southampton. Fantastic player.
Right.
Yeah, sensational player. So you've got Ginola, Cantona, Letizia servicing who, Juergen?
All right. Well, I'll give you probably a little harder one. This is more of somebody I played with, so I probably should have done this across the board. But this is somebody I played with. He's not American. Did play in England. Did play in the U.S. Did play for the U.S. national team.
Got it.
Played for multiple clubs in the UK, London and Northern clubs.
I think I got it. Did he play for Chelsea?
He did, and Marv would know, he's South African by descent, but he became a naturalized U.S. citizen with his family here in Florida, and he's a very good friend of mine to date. He lives
Is he? I've been trying to contact him to get him on. He's obviously he doesn't like me then. Wow.
Okay. No, it's just I'll get him for you, Marv.
No, but he always quite aloof.
I play golf with him from time to time. So when I'm in Florida, I go up to see him in Sarasota, and he became quite the golfer here. If you did not know that.
Did he turn pro? I thought he turned pro.
He tried. He was very, very close. He was very close. He was on the Nike tour for a while, and
he played for QPR as well, Andrew. Luton, QPR, Chelsea, Andrew's face, Coventry as well.
Yeah.
Now go on.
Roy Wegley.
Oh.
Yeah. Got to give Roy a shout. He's a good guy, and
he's a good guy.
100%.
A really good guy.
Really good guy. And
one of the first Americans to really grace the Premier League, England, really, wasn't he?
No, you're right.
Sorry, I should have got him. I apologise.
He's one of the first U.S. guys to really get over there, and before, I don't even think most of the Americans even knew he was American. He was over there playing, right? Because it goes back to my previous point. It was such a small mom and pop shop that they had trouble just even tracking who was who and where they were. But Roy was arguably one of the first guys over there and really made an impact, right? He started at Luton. That's why I kind of followed him a little bit, because he kind of had a similar path to me with it, being at Luton and going to Queen's Park Rangers and then Chelsea and then Coventry and on. So
he was at Chelsea first, Jurgs, I think. He was at Chelsea first, and Luton brought him for 50,000, I think, at the time. Yeah.
Right. And then he went to QPR, and I remember the chants, we've got Cantona, we've got Wagerly, or whatever his chants are that I've seen out there. But so he's a lot of fun, and he was my roommate on the U.S. national teams on a lot of trips. So I really got to know him. And Roy was just a super dedicated athlete. Just to give you a quick example what he was capable of. So he was ACL deficient in a knee. So he had a torn ACL right before one of the World Cups on the '98 World Cup team. So we were going to France for the World Cup. And so he found the best sports performance guy. And there's a guy named Vern Gambetta down in Florida that's just kind of on a whole nother level, just really elite performance guy. So Roy started working out with this guy religiously, like, twice a day over the top to get ready to be with the U.S. team and try to make the World Cup team. short end of the story was he ended up being the fittest guy, the bleep test and everything else we were doing at those times, all the running stuff. I think Roy at 38 came in as next to Kobe Jones. He was the most fit player we had in the group at 38 years old. You know what Roy was like, Marv. He just kept immaculate care of himself. He's like kind of like Ronaldo, right? Everything he ate, everything he drank, everything he wore, his hair was perfect.
Yeah.
He just he looked the part, but he kept himself in such great nick that he ended up impressing the staff, and probably shouldn't have made the team had they known his ACL issue. But the sports coach he had really strengthened his quads and his hamstrings and all his muscles around his knee to help him stabilize it, and he was still able to perform. And his experience, he's one of the experienced guys you carry on your roster. And he's not going to be a starter and run all the miles for you, but he's one of the guys, if you need to bring into the game as an experienced player, could definitely help you in a situation or two. So he just ended up being a good guy.
He scored that goal against, who was it? Was it Leeds for QPR when he dribbled from the halfway line? Was it?
Yeah, from the halfway line, took on about six players and scored. Yeah, so he had quite a good following there at QPR, and having touched some of the clubs that he did as well, that's made it fun, and gotten to know him a lot better over the years here. So I always try to find time to at least see him once a year when I get down.
Well, you're the connection then, Yves. You'll have to get him for me. So
I'll get him for you. Not a problem.
Roy's a good guy. I like Roy. I did like him.
Fantastic.
All right.
Next to Roy is.
So this is a striker for a big Premiership club, international. Try not to give it away too much. Blonde hair. Played in the game at QPR one time that Lee Dixon came screaming down the wing late in the game. It was wet. And remember those Mitre Delta Premiership balls we used to play with? This thing had soaked up so much water. It was like a cannonball by the time we got to the end of the game. So Lee Dixon fires in this cross. It was probably no higher than 2 or 3 feet off the ground. And you know what he was like. So this thing had so much velocity on the cross coming in. And this guy took it first time out of the air, top of the box. I'm standing on the 6-yard line. 6-yard box thinking, I'm going to cut the angle here. And he rips this volley and it actually flies by my head, clips my ear and goes into the top corner. And all I could think was like, thank God that thing didn't hit me square in the face, because it would have broken my nose and knocked out all my
I think this could be your favorite player, Andrew.
It is. It's my favorite, my hero of a player. Is it the Dutch wonder man, Dennis Bergkamp?
It is. Good call.
Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah. Great call by you. Great call.
So I'll give you a quick story there. So after that goal went in against me, Casey Keller calls me up and like just heckling me, because it was, obviously on Match of the Day and all this stuff, and making fun of me. I can't believe he just, ripped your head off. And probably 2 weeks later, Arsenal was up at Leicester City, right? And same thing, Lee Dixon comes out of the back, but this time he's about at the halfway line, and he clips a ball to the top of the box to Dennis Bergkamp, who ball comes up over his head. Defender comes out. He takes it out of the air with his left foot, flicks it over himself, over the defender, and then hits a volley up into the top corner on Casey. So I was able to call Casey back and go, he just tore the ass out of you, Casey. And back in the day, I'm watching all the highlights. So, what a tremendous talent he was. To be on the field against him was kind of special. So,
yeah, another player who looked after himself and played for so long at the top level.
Yeah, he did. Right, he was a true professional and was there on the international scene and the Premiership scene for quite a while. So,
well, I mean, you picked a lot of players in here that are pretty much actually anybody outside of the defence that is very, very unpredictable. What would you say to young goalkeepers, or as to, is there anything you can do to prepare yourself against them? Is it you always have to be on your toes? Is it expect the unexpected, or is it just sometimes there's just nothing you can do?
No, you're right. Sometimes, like with goalkeeping training, sometimes it becomes so repetitive, right? You're doing the same motions over and over, right? Whether it's a goalkeeping coach or it's a finishing exercise, and it can be a little bit generic and stale. So when I look at some of the, like Tony Roberts was a great goalkeeper and a great goalkeeping coach, and he's still coaching now. I think he's at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I watch his videos sometimes. And I did some goalkeeping coaching here for our national teams for a little while, and we have a little bit of exposure to South America. So there's opportunities to go to Argentina and places like that for, goalkeeping seminars and stuff. And so they do, and Tony did a lot of this where there's obstacles now that you would put in a goalkeeper's pathway, whether, it's some PVC piping or just to get some unpredictability in the exercises, right? To get the ball doing some different last minute deflections and things like that. So I think the more that you can incorporate that into goalkeeping training, the better. Because if it's just, going through a finishing exercise where every shot kind of looks the same, that's great work, but you also have to prepare yourself, in these high pressure games and situations for the unexpected. You look at Ronaldo's goal the other night in the Champions League game, just how quickly it can, a combination of give and goes can happen, and all of a sudden a finishing opportunity presents itself from there, and you have to be, as a goalkeeper, ready to respond for that. So it's not only your brain and your eyes that have to kind of see and read the play. It's, are your feet right? Is your weight distributed evenly? Do you have balance? Can you get to things that you weren't maybe expecting, in awkward positions? So I think, the Peter Schmeichel obviously is a great goalkeeper in that respect, that he could come out and smother and swallow things up that even he would admit that he wasn't quite sure where it was going or how he was going to stop. And he just found a way to come out and make himself as big as possible to kind of present, the biggest shield that he could. So he's probably one of the best guys at that. So yeah, I like the unpredictable, as a goalkeeper, those are the guys that scare you the most, that are unpredictable, right? So that's why a lot of those guys made my team. But I do have a couple honorable mentions for you. So this might be, I have a good backstory to this one too. So this guy might be a little bit harder for you guys, but I'll give you this. He was a Central American player. He spent some time in the US. I tried to get Queens Park Rangers to sign him when he came over on trial. And at that point, Ray Wilkins had left, and Stuart Houston and Bruce Rioch came from Arsenal to QPR. So we had him in the clubhouse for 2 weeks, but we did not sign him. And he went on to do some wonderful things and could have helped us at that time. So
he's a central
American.
defender. Central defender,
he's a striker. I'll tell you, he's a striker.
Oh, striker. He
also went on to play for
Derby
his national team and manage his national team. And was it the last World Cup? For a small Central American country, they went the furthest in the World Cup that any Central American country ever has in their history. And he was an integral part of the management team of that.
I'm going to throw Paulo Wanchope in.
Yes. Yeah.
Costa Rica?
Yeah. Costa Rican international.
Well done, Andrew.
QPR came to me and it said, hey, we want to get some videos of this guy. Can you help us through US Soccer? So I acquired a handful of videos because obviously we see them a lot. And I think Paulo spent some time in the US. He was raised in Texas for a little while. Again, the US asleep at the wheel. Didn't bring this guy in and give him a youth cap, right? Which they should have. So he goes on to represent Costa Rica, but he came in. So we've seen him in World Cup qualifying and, in some of the events that we play here on a regular basis. And you could tell this guy was raw, right? He was young and raw, but super, super talented, lots of pace. You could tell he had fire and he had the tools. And so I told, Stuart and Bruce Rioch, hey, you got to sign this guy. He's phenomenal. He's an up and coming young talent. I mean, he's tearing the backside out of us in the U.S. and the CONCACAF single-handedly. And, it was all frowned up. And it was a 2-player deal. They had to bring in Mauricio Solis and Paulo Wanchope together to, they were trying to bring him in together with the agent. Anyway, we let the guy go. And I think he went on to play for Derby County. And then he went on for Manchester City, I think West Ham. He scored some great goals. I think one season he had 27 Premiership goals and was one of the leading goal scorers. So
Yeah.
We had him we had him there, $200,000, 150,000 pounds. We could have had him at that point at QPR. And I was trying to, work with Paulo to say, come here, come here, come here. We didn't sign him, and we cut him loose, and he went on to really do some good things. So, but what a talented player he was. And again, then he went on to coach and get into management for the Costa Rican national team, and they had a great run in the World Cup, so.
Yeah, fantastic run.
Another honorable mention for me.
Do you want to reel them off? We don't worry about guessing. Do you want to go through them?
Yeah,
I'll go through them real quick. Another midfielder. This guy was Ray Wilkins. Rest in peace, Ray. But obviously gave me a great chance at Queens Park Rangers. He did come on as player manager a couple times when I was actually playing, so I could say I played with him. But what a world-class gentleman he was, and I felt one of the best the English have ever put out there in terms of player, person, manager, and really just kind of took care of me and Susie, and just world class. So I have nothing but the highest regards for Ray and what he did. From a goalkeeper standpoint, I'll give Brad Friedel a shout out as an honorable mention. Brad and I go back a little bit. I didn't realize this, but I mentioned earlier when I walked onto Indiana University, I came out of nowhere to play for that team. In doing that, we won, the highest award my second year there, the national championship, and I got Adidas Goalkeeper of the Year that year. That actually kicked Brad. Brad was supposed to come to Indiana on a full scholarship and play there, but because I was there, we had just won. He went to UCLA instead. And he committed from Indiana, went to UCLA. And another kind of fun fact, in that national championship year in 1988, Casey Keller was in Bloomington, Indiana with Portland University. Shaka Hislop was there with Howard University, and I was there with Indiana University. So we beat Casey in the semifinal, and then we beat Shaka Hislop and Howard University in the final to win the national championship 1-0. And all three of us, and Brad, who was supposed to be at Indiana at UCLA, all ended up in England as goalkeepers. So what a crazy world. But Brad was a hell of a goalkeeper, and probably the hardest working goalkeeper that I've actually ever worked with or competed against. I mean, this guy would work and work and work. He'd outwork anybody. So, and again, he had great skill sets, great tools, very strong mentally. What a competitor he was. So, I think he's one of the, in my opinion, of all the U.S. goalkeepers that went over there, I think he's had probably the most profound career, the longest career, tons of games, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a good guy. The other.
One more.
And then we're good. Cleety, I would probably say have to thank Cleety as an honorable mention as a manager, right? Just to kind of.
Hold on there. We're going to go in. Because we always pick a manager as well to lead this 11 you picked. So,
gotcha.
He might come into the reckoning there. So, which manager?
And we are actually going to nail you on a manager who has managed you. So it can't be any manager you've ever played against or.
All right. So Cleety's too obvious. So obviously he's special for me. But there's one other guy there. I may or may not have mentioned him earlier in the show, but he would be an international manager that came in to manage the U.S. team kind of during my time with my primary time with the U.S. national team. I don't know how many more clues I can give you. So he's not a U.S. citizen. He's definitely a European.
But he's the Yugoslavia manager in USA '94. Goran.
Yeah.
Starts with B. Bora Milutinovic. So
Bora, okay.
Bora was great. He was kind of exactly what we needed in the U.S. at that time, right? We had a lot of guys on our team that were playing in England. Tab Ramos was in Spain and some other places. So we had a lot of guys thought they were really good players. But on the world stage, on a World Cup stage, it really didn't, we weren't in the same company, so to speak, in terms of total depth and talent as a team. So Bora was able to really shape what we had, which is, right, very competitive guys, very athletic. You know, we could cover ground, we could defend, maybe not as creative in front of goal or in midfield as we wanted to be, but he was able to shape our team and give us a very competitive advantage, especially being at home in the World Cup. And yeah, he's, you know, he was a little bit of a magician as a manager. He could make things happen, and obviously went on to manage, I think, 4 different countries and 4 different World Cups. So we just had a great relationship, and he really kind of took me under his wing and kind of brought me along. And he and Pleedy actually formed quite a, because he came to scout me right before the, you know, the 94 World Cup team. And he spent a lot of time with Pleedy, because it really came down to Tony Meola was going to be the starting goalkeeper because he was in the U.S. playing games. He was kind of the poster child of our national team. And so Brad Friedel was on the team as well. And then it really came down, there was that debate. Casey was at Millwall at the time, and I was at Luton Town, and we were both playing. And so the U.S. guys would come over quite a bit and scout us. And Pleedy just built such a great rapport with Bora, you know, talking about the game. You know what Pleedy's like, you know, he's such such a student of the game, and he's talking about things that most managers don't talk about. And Bora was really cut from the same cloth. And I think that was a big reason why that definitely helped me make that team and to continue on. So yeah, he was a great manager, learned a lot from him. So
Perfect. And our last question, Jörg, before you go, just for all the listeners and the teams you play for, what are you doing now? What are you at?
So when I was done with football, I was, you know, honestly, I was really done with football because I was fortunate to play for a while. The end of my career was a little bit difficult. I had 2 ACL reconstructions, 1 in each knee. In my last couple of years of professional football with the New England Revolution, Stevie Nicol was our manager. It was a lot of fun to play with Stevie and actually see kind of a Middle Earth person play football like Stevie Nicol could. Is what an amazing player he was too. But I tore my Achilles tendon, you know, right before the 2002 World Cup, which kind of knocked me out of that team. And so I really had to think hard, what was I going to do next? And Susie and I were starting a family. We had our second child, Noah, in Boston. And then we just decided to say, hey, we're done. MLS still wanted me to play MLS, but I was just mentally done. We went back here to Indianapolis to be around my wife's family, primarily for our kids to have, you know, grandparents and aunts and uncles around. And I got into medical sales. So I was doing total joint replacement, hips and knees, and blood and bone products for a company called DePuy Orthopedics, a Johnson & Johnson company. So I did medical devices for a while. Then I got into commercial real estate as well for about 10 years. I did that. And then I got kind of pulled back into football. You know, I did things with the youth national teams for the United States. I was with Bob Bradley from 2007 to the 2010 World Cup as the goalkeeper coach for the U.S. national teams, did a Copa America in Venezuela in 2007 and numerous Gold Cups and other things. But what I realized was I was just done with the traveling, because what happens is, as we all know, you just have to spend so much time on the road, scouting, recruiting, you know, playing games, being involved in, you know, the Federation in Chicago. And it just took up too much time and took me away from my family, that I was missing what my kids were doing. So I, you know, just kind of hunkered back in, got settled in. Then I was offered the Indy 11 job, which is kind of a lower level professional football here in the U.S. So I was a head coach there for 3 years. I brought Paul Telfer over to coach with me, as you know, and did that. And so I enjoyed that, to try to get professional football kind of up and running here in Indianapolis. But, you know, as all managers go, that doesn't last forever. And then I got back into youth football. There's a great community organization here. That's kind of the primary youth development sports organization for our community, Carmel, Indiana. It's called the Carmel Dads Club. And I oversee most of the, if not all, the soccer development here. So we have over 600 travel kids and about 2,500 rec soccer players. So it's just managing that, facilities, and it's kind of grown on me. You know, it's the impact you can have with kids and being around young families. It's it's really fun and enjoyable. I'm thankful my wife is a professional. You know, she's a realtor and does very well in residential real estate here in our area, and kind of, you know, brings home the bacon. So that allows me a little bit of freedom to continue to do this. So it's been a lot of fun. So I really enjoy the youth side of the game. And it's not necessarily developing the most competitive team or the only coaching the best players. I kind of focus on the younger element of the club, the U8s, U9s, U10s. And quite often I have coaches that'll coach the more competitive teams. And I like, you know, putting kids on teams that maybe would get cut at other clubs. And we create teams and keep these kids playing and just create a, you know, environment and try to make them passionate about the sport and love soccer. And they do. And usually a couple diamonds come out of that, you know, that we didn't expect at 9 and 10, but by 11 and 12, you know, they're playing for the higher level teams. They're playing for their high school teams. And I've had kids that I've coached here that have gone on to play for our national team and, you know, various college teams. So that's always fun. So I do have my hand in the sport a little bit here. But primarily I just do whatever my wife tells me to do.
That makes sense. Yeah. All right, Juergen.
Fantastic. That was Errol. It was lovely to hear from you. Thank you so much for giving up your time, Juergen. And that was Juergen Sommer's My Best 11.